Good morning. Hello, everyone here and online. Thank you so much for being here. I know it was probably hard to get out on such a wet, rainy day today. And as you can imagine, this doesn't make for good weather for bird migration. So our staff are currently all hunkered down inside just as the birds are doing right now. But days like this, sometimes when the rain lets up, we can actually end up having a fantastic migration. So the birds kind of build up and wait out that storm. And those are sometimes really good days that can happen after poor weather with rain as well as fog. So who knows what might happen if this breaks a little bit later on in the day. You might want to head up to Hawk Ridge and get to see some birds. I'm going to just go ahead and get my presentation here shared on the screen. And just a little bit about myself. So, as Sally mentioned, my name is Janelle Long. I'm the executive director. I started with Hawk Ridge Bird Observatory back in 2007. So I was brought on as their first paid full-time year-round employee. We have now since grown our current seasonal staff. We have probably around 20 people that work for us seasonally during the fall bird migration. And that is a mix of our research staff. So we have bird migration counters, we have bird banders, we also have our environmental education naturalists that are also working up at Hawk Ridge. We've recently expanded to also have a couple visitor services people. And so that's something that's also needed since we have people that are visiting all throughout the world during the fall bird migration. And so it's been really, really exciting to see Hawk Ridge grow. And that's something I'll be sharing with you because as Hawk Ridge has been growing, we are also needing to expand some of our services and space up at Hawk Ridge. And so that's something I'll be touching on a little bit later in our presentation. So just a quick couple of things. I was asked earlier, if I'm from Duluth, I grew up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and my undergrad, I always knew I wanted to go into something with animals. My undergrad was at UW-Stevens Point. I went for wildlife management and biology, and that is when I was caught by the bird bug, I guess. My first spark came when I was out on a field trip and I got to see a sandhill crane fly by. Growing up in Milwaukee, that wasn't a bird that I had seen before, and I was completely wowed. It was this big, massive, beautiful bird that just, slowly flew over our head at Buena Vista Marsh. And then one of my other spark birds would have been a pileated woodpecker. So I grew up watching Woody Woodpecker, and the first time I saw a pileated woodpecker, my mind was blown. I had no idea that these birds even existed in our state. And from that point on, I was so excited and just wanted to continue to learn. And I was at the right college with great professors who took us out in the field. We got to see a lot of wonderful birds throughout all of my classes, and that love of birds just continued to grow. I got to spend several seasons working, helping out PhD students with some of their field research, which took me all throughout the United States. I thought I was going to continue on and go for more of the research side of birds, but I was also really interested in education. Both my parents were teachers. I didn't think I'd ever want to go into teaching, but I was really excited about environmental education, and that took me into grad school. And so I went to grad school with a cooperative program with Wolf Ridge Environmental Learning Center up in Finland and UMD. And that was where I finished my master's in education with environmental ed as a focus. That's how I was first introduced to Hawk Ridge. So I obviously was excited. I had heard about Hawk Ridge, went up during the fall bird migration. That was also the year we had the big owl invasion. So that was back in the winter of 2004, where we were seeing all those beautiful great gray owls and northern hawk owls, boreal owls, and Hawk Ridge at the time was doing a winter owl survey. And so I participated in that. And after college, I actually went out and worked for the Bureau of Land Management for a couple of years, but it was one of the professors here at UMD that reconnected with me and said, hey, there's this new position that's coming open at Hawk Ridge Bird Observatory. Hawk Ridge Bird Observatory was a fairly new nonprofit, just started in 2003. and now manages the Hawk Ridge Nature Reserve. And so I thought, hey, we always wanted to come back and live somewhere along the North Shore, and we loved the Duluth area. So my husband and I moved back, and now he's a science teacher over at Stella Maris, and I've been working with Hawk Ridge since 2007, and we have 3 children as well. So I'm not quite sure how much they'll end up loving birds having been so exposed to them, but just, yeah, fun connections. So a little bit about the history of the site. I'll go over research, education, stewardship programs, some of our new exciting news with our future facilities improvement plans, and then we'll leave some time for questions. So hopefully everyone here, has anyone not been to Hawk Ridge? And don't be afraid to let me, okay, that's good. Well, see, now hopefully you will get to come up there, because right now this is the best time of year to come visit. September 1st through October 31st is our peak time for the fall bird migration. So that's when we have staff up there every single day, unless it's a day like today where it's raining and foggy, but we are watching that weather, and we will open back up if that does break. So what makes Hawk Ridge such an amazing place to watch the birds? You know, annually we're counting between 200 to 300,000 plus birds that are migrating over Duluth. As you know, we have that big cold body of water, Lake Superior. Birds don't necessarily like to fly over that. The air sinks over the lake. It's cold. They have to expend a lot more energy. So what happens is these birds are being funneled down the shoreline. And as we're getting some of that warm air during the midday, it creates what are called thermals. The birds are able to rise up on those warm pockets of air, and you might see what almost looks like a tornado forming of birds as they're funneling higher and higher up into the sky. As they're gaining altitude, they're able to come out of those thermals and they start soaring. And for every, 1 mile in altitude that the birds can rise, some birds can soar for as far as 7 miles without having to really flap their wings. So it's super efficient. This time of year, the birds are driven by food. Their food is heading south, their food's heading underground. They need to get out of here. They need to move further where there is warmer weather. And so that's what we're seeing right now. Those birds are migrating down to their wintering grounds, some just as far as maybe southern Minnesota. Others are going all the way down to those southern tip of South America. So some of those birds have a very long migratory journey.
Said you soar up a mile? How many miles high do you go?
That's a good question, and it depends on the species. And so if you think of an airplane, that can be a dangerous thing with altitude, so there are birds that, you don't want to be in a plane where they're hitting actually the thing. I'm not quite sure the exact distance, because again, I think it varies on the number of species and the weather conditions. There's days that the birds are migrating and they're migrating at lower levels as well. So good question. So the history of Hawk Ridge, it's not that this just formed recently. The birds have been migrating down this geographic pathway for probably eons, who knows how long. So it was once known as a place where birds were shot. And so you can imagine all these birds are gathering back before laws were in place. It was an easy place for target practice for hunters. There's old records of, people gathering up bushel baskets of dead hawks, students that would actually help and try to rehabilitate some birds. I've talked with people that grew up in Duluth and remember what it was like during those early years. It wasn't until later that some of these folks that you see in the picture here, John and Jan Green, Dr. Pershing, also known as Jack Hofsland, who was the first ornithology professor at UMD, Joel Bronell. So some of the people that are photographed here, as well as Molly Evans, who is one of our first raptor counters, they were those early pioneers. They're the ones that really started speaking up, and they helped push a law within the city of Duluth to stop shooting up at Hawk Ridge. I got to meet Jack Hofsland, who is really kind of that founding person who would bring his students up in the early 50s, started those informal raptor counts. And he told me that he used to put a little cardboard sign that would say, "Don't shoot hawks." And he would set it out at Hawk Ridge. it would be thrown into the bushes. He'd go out the next day, do it again. And so they really cared. They really recognized this as a special place. And so the members of the Duluth Bird Club, which then became the Duluth Audubon Society, helped raise the initial funds to purchase the land. So they raised that money, they turned those funds over to the city of Duluth to create Hawk Ridge Nature Reserve. So Hawk Ridge Nature Reserve was established in 1972. Last year, we celebrated our 50th anniversary. We had a wonderful event, and we really got to bring back people from all the decades, including some of the children of the founders, people that worked up there in the early years. So it's pretty special to be able to continue Hawk Ridge Bird Observatory and continuing that tradition, that hawk migration research and the education that was started all those years ago.
Hey, there's another thing.
Oh, yes.
Why did they shoot the hawks?
Yeah, so the question was, when did they, why did they shoot the hawks? It was target practice. And so hunters, that it was easy for them to actually just be able to shoot the birds just for no other reason other than practicing shooting back in those early years.
My wife just told me not to ask.
And I will be happy to take more questions at the end as well. I do want to keep you on time. So Hawk Ridge Nature Reserve was also established as the first important bird area here in Minnesota, which is another special recognition. So there's, sites all throughout North America that have that recognition. If they're a special place for bird conservation, recognized in Hawk Ridge being one of the largest migratory bird sites in the United States. We're counting a higher diversity and higher number of raptors than many of the other hawk watch sites all throughout the US. And so our information is used in establishing, some of those long-term trends. It takes about 10 years of data to really start to understand what's happening within the health of the raptor population. And so that's something that Hawk Ridge has now been doing for 51 years this season. Our mission is to protect birds of prey and other migratory birds in the Western Lake Superior region through research, education, and stewardship. And so I'm going to talk about those three parts core to our mission: research, education, and stewardship. So I mentioned before, 50 years and counting at Hawk Ridge. Again, we get to see a large diversity of birds, not just raptors, even though that's what Hawk Ridge was most well known for. We have expanded beyond that. So we're not only counting raptors, which are the eagles and falcons and hawks. We're counting all birds, and we have an amazing non-raptor migration that's happening all along the shoreline that we're seeing at Hawk Ridge and extending down to the shore with warblers and finches and all kinds of other beautiful birds that you might just see in your backyard at your feeders. So some of our main research programs that we're doing at Hawk Ridge, so we're conducting our count, we're conducting our banding. We also have a spring migration that's happening. And so that was established in the early 90s, just more on a volunteer basis. That is something that we have now kind of restarted over on West Skyline. So Hawk Ridge Nature Reserve is on East Skyline Parkway. The spring migration, that is the better place to view it, is over on West Skyline. We have two count sites, one right below Anger Tower, and then the other one right below the Thompson Hill Rest Area. And so you might see from March 1st through May 31st, a couple of our counters and education staff that are out there teaching about the spring migration. In the summertime, we're back at Hawk Ridge. We're conducting a breeding bird survey. And so we have some of our lead passerine or songbird banders that are out there. They're actually catching some of the non-raptors that are breeding within Hawk Ridge Nature Reserve. And we're learning more about who's here, who's on our site, and where they're moving to. So other various research projects, we have recently collaborated with UMD. That seems to be growing year after year, where we are bringing in students that might start with Hawk Ridge as a trainee or one of our seasonal staff, and then they want to continue on their research. There might be something that, a question that came up during the fall season that they're wowed by, and so that's something that's been really, really exciting. We've now had at least 5 5 or 6 grad students that we have worked with on both the research and education side. And what a great place to be able to do your study here. We have a traineeship and apprenticeship program as well. And so these are for students really, interested in birding. They're maybe not quite sure if they want to go down that research avenue, the education avenue. And so our trainees work with all of our core staff. And this year it's been a lot of fun. Our trainees get to rotate on a weekly basis between each of our areas. So they'll spend 1 week at the count, then 1 week at our banding station, then 1 week out front doing our environmental education, our naturalist work. Our education programs have very much expanded. When I started with Hawk Ridge, it was primarily fall, and that was it. There was not a whole lot of other stuff happening throughout the year. We were starting to build some of those programs, going out into the schools and teaching programs, doing some other outreach events, but now that is something that has really, really changed. We are doing education year round. We just brought on our first full-time year-round education director. We've had seasonal education directors in the past, but Margie Menzies, she's worked with Hawk Ridge for about 13 years. And yeah, she is really blowing our education out of the water with all of the great new programs and additions. So we're doing education during the fall season at Hawk Ridge, during the spring over at West Skyline. We have students that are coming out on buses. Other winter and summer outreach, we partner with a lot of the other environmental education, nature centers, Hartley, the aquarium. We work with them during some of their summer camps, the Lake Superior Zoo, and international birding trips. So this is our second year of leading international birding trips. So Margie will be heading to Costa Rica at the end of October, and then heading over to Ecuador early in 2024. So check out our website if you're interested in any of that. And then visitors. So we have visitors that come throughout the world to Hawk Ridge, and they come year after year. I just got to reconnect with 2 of our regular visitors. They come from Japan every year. They came just last weekend during our festival weekend, but we've documented visitors from all the states, 50 plus countries, and that's something we're collecting data on, and we've been able to share that with the city of Duluth. And so that's been one of our new funding revenues as well, is getting some of those funds from the tourism tax dollars, which is super important. And as we're continuing to expand, that has definitely been something that has helped us do that. In site stewardship, so I mentioned that we are the management entity. We work in cooperation with the city of Duluth in managing Hawk Ridge Nature Reserve. It is primarily our volunteers. We have a stewardship committee that's actually doing that maintenance of the trails, of the land, working with the city with some of the forestry type management that's happening there. But it's something that is so important. And again, as Hawk Ridge has been expanding, we've also looked at all the other users. It's not just birders that are using Hawk Ridge Nature Reserve. It's people that are running and bringing their dogs and hiking and biking. And so it's been great just to connect and learn more about some of our other user groups. There's a race happening up there just in a couple weeks as well. So all kinds of exciting things that we're learning about and continuing to expand on. So the next part I'm going to talk a little bit about is our new facilities improvements. And that is, I'll give a quick background here. Yep, our current facilities, if you haven't been up to Hawk Ridge, it's pretty basic and it really hasn't changed much in 50 years. So we have what we call our main overlook area, which is where you'll, at this time of year, see all the visitors, all of our staff. You'll see our signage, our observation count platform, which is where our counters are counting all of those birds from. We have a banding research station, which is closed off to the public. That is a private site, since as we're luring those birds in to actually catch them and band them. And if you don't know what that actually means, is that the birds, we use a series of nets, and we are actually catching those birds, measuring them. We put these little bands that look almost like a little bracelet that has a unique identification number, kind of like a social security number. And with that band, that hope is that that bird is recovered at another banding station elsewhere. And so with that, we're able to find out where those birds are traveling to, how old they are. And so getting all kinds of good information from that. And yes, so we don't really have any other built physical facilities. You'll see the porta potties. We have our hiking trails, and then our one education program area, which can comfortably hold about 40 people. So that brings us to why we are looking to expand. So we have limited accessible facilities. If you've been up to Hawk Ridge, yes, it's very accessible viewing the migration from the roadside, but when we have visitors and students, trying to get them out on our trails is not easy. Our trails are very rocky and rugged, and as we've been expanding with the number of people, the number of students, it's been really difficult to kind of figure out where we're going to safely put people. So safety, that's the other part of it. East Skyline Parkway, it's a busy road. We do our best to have volunteers and putting out signage to alert people that there's traffic coming, but we are in a continued kind of battle with cars coming through. Some of the cars are not very kind. They will speed through there. It can be really scary for our staff as well as the students that are visiting there. And so that is something that we are also addressing with this plan. Education space and capacity. I mentioned we just have our one education program area. And so again, that's something we've outgrown. We have students that come from all over the region, sometimes bringing multiple classes at a time to save with busing costs. And so again, it's hard for us to kind of shuffle and split up these groups when we don't have the space to do so. So here's just one picture. The boardwalk here was actually done by one of our Eagle Scouts, but this is what our trails can look like if you're out there, especially on a somewhat wet day. So not very accessible, rugged and rocky. And so trying to, recreate a new space where we can get people out there of all abilities, all ages. Visitor safety, this is what it looks like at Hawk Ridge on one of those busy days along East Skyline Parkway. So you can see that interface of the vehicle coming in with all of the people there. Our volunteers are continually trying to get people off the road as best they can for the cars. And then this is our education area, just wooden benches. We also have to deal with a lot of vandalism up at Hawk Ridge, unfortunately, as many of the city parks have to deal with as well. And so that's unfortunate with anything that we are looking to create there. We're working with the city and trying to figure out ways how we can create things that are more indestructible. So this plan has been part of our strategic plan for quite a while. So it started with just the need for an education program area back in 2009, 2016. We realized as we continued to grow, we were limited with accessibility with the numbers of students coming up there. So that was an issue we wanted to address. And then 2019 is when we started getting some grant funding for our initial planning work. Our planning process, again, we work closely with the city of Duluth since those funds were turned over to them as the owners of the property, but we have the trust agreement as the management entity of the property. So we're doing this cooperatively. We had met with them, received the approvals that we needed to move forward on our planning process for this. 2021, we held some focus group meetings to try to, see is there anything that we're missing. We wanted to talk with a number of constituents within each of those areas throughout our community, which was really helpful as we were building our plan. 2021, we received our final grant funding so we could do our planning work. So we worked with SAS and Associates here in Duluth to establish that initial kind of design work that was needed. And 2022, just last year, we had our public open house, which was held for comment once we had all of our pre-design work ready. And now this year, I've been working pretty much on a monthly basis with the city, doing our fundraising plan, where we're going to go to next. And what our hope is that we are going to have this primarily grant funded. And so that is what we are looking at. So the new thing that kind of our first phase with the accessibility is creating a new accessible trail. So that new accessible trail will be a loop trail. And from that accessible trail, we'll have new education program areas off of that. And what our vision is that we want it to kind of be a migratory journey trail. So as the birds migrate, you're following along. We really want to get people and students, that are able just to kind of move along that way safely and have that accessibility, and getting people into that nature reserve as well. And so it's something that we are very excited and hopeful that we will bring to fruition on the roadway, improving that safety, some roadway enhancements, creating some extended observation platforms to get visitors off of the road onto the platform, some additional seating that would be built in, some bollards along the roadway to create some safe walkways. And so again, improving that road and safety enhancement for the visitors as well as our students that are coming to Hawk Ridge. And then we have some additional education areas. So again, not having a large space when we have a big group of students coming from a school, having more of a seated amphitheater space where we can have a large group program. We also do evening owl programs. We've outgrown that small space that's a popular program. And so again, to be able to have a larger space for that, some more permanent restrooms other than just the porta potties, a covered kind of picnic shelter space, which can also serve as a backup location for us when there is poor weather. Sometimes if it starts to rain, we don't have anywhere to go with students. Our naturalists have actually taught some of the programs while the students were sitting on the bus, which is less than ideal. We want to keep them outside and keep that migration as their, as their classroom. And so we've gone through what I've said, that pre-planning process. So we have kind of that pre-design. We're going to now work into our next phase, which is getting towards that concept design, which is then what we will utilize for our funding for grants. And all of these images, so through the city of Duluth, this was all approved last year. We had to go through the Parks and Rec Commission, the city council, and we actually have our full kind of initial mini master facilities plan that's online through the city of Duluth website. And I'm happy to share that link. I don't know if there's one person I can share it with, that can be shared with the constituents as well. So you can look at all of this in further detail. Yeah, so our next big grant, what we're hoping for, we're going to be submitting through LCCMR funds, which are through the state. That is what we're working towards in 2024. And so with that, once we have that initial funding established, then our hope is that we would actually start to break ground 2025, 2026. And our phase one would be that accessible trail, those restroom facility, those education classrooms coming off the accessible trail. So we have everything phased out, and we'll just have to see how it goes as our funding comes into place. And again, yeah, we couldn't do this without all the wonderful people. We are primarily supported by our members and donors. So those of you that are members of Hawk Ridge, or if you just come up and visit Hawk Ridge, if you buy something from our merchandise gift shop where you get your Hawk Ridge gear, birding gear, those are all things, all of those funds are coming back to help support the important work that we're doing for the birds and for the community at Hawk Ridge Nature Reserve. And just a thanks to some of our other partners who've worked with us throughout our planning project with the facilities. And yeah, we invite all of you to come up to Hawk Ridge, like I said, all the way through October 31st, staff up there every single day, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. Some of you might be volunteers. We have about 70 volunteers throughout our community and beyond that are also helping up at Hawk Ridge. So thank you so much. And I don't know where we're at on time here, but I'm happy to take questions unless we're close.
Thanks so much, Janelle.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, like 10 minutes. All right, Janelle, what is a dollar?
Yes, and so they're like the round plastic. Yeah, I don't know how to. It's like a little barrier type thing. I'm not quite sure how to how to best explain
Do
it.
you
But
have bollards there now?
we don't know. We have safety cones and other signage and things that we're using for just trying to create that awareness for the vehicles that are coming in with our visitors.
Thank you so much for your presentation. Do you know, is there a blue jay migration? Because I have a crabapple tree and in the last week I look out, there might be 8 or 10 blue jays in my tree.
Yes, so
Eating those crabapples, so they do migrate.
yeah, and it's a mix. So I do want to mention, because the blue jay migration has been super exciting this season. We broke our record number of blue jays that we counted up at Hawk Ridge, and they're still coming through. I remember I live just near Congdon Park Elementary School, and one morning it was just waves and waves of blue jays. I don't know if anyone else experienced that, but I mean, I think we're at least 70,000 plus blue jays that have been counted for the season. With that question too, though, I did want to point out, if anyone is interested in looking at our numbers from our main homepage on our website at hawkridge.org, our counters are entering all of that data into a tablet, which is now so neat because people can view it live from anywhere that they are. They can just click on our live count. It's a button on our homepage, and you can actually see the numbers of birds from exactly what they've counted to that minute and going back through the beginning of the years. And then there's another site that filters into called hawkcount.org. And that site also has all of our count information all the way back to 1972. And so you could look at, August 10th from 1985 and see, what birds were counted on that day.
Very cool. Thank you. Other questions?
You have one?
Mentioned that there are lots and lots of memberships and donations, and that's how you really get the work done. Is there a way to donate from your website and also to Venmo?
Yes, and we don't have Venmo. That's a good question, but yes, there is definitely a way to donate right from our website. So right under our support tab, it has all, our membership information, our donation page, and then again, just up at Hawk Ridge as well. So we have, options for people to become a member right on site, to donate, and again, purchasing merchandise, participating in programs and events, that's all on there. And there are programs that are being held every single weekend that are open and free to the public. And so you can find that on our website under our calendar information or under our events page. We have OWL programs. Our OWL banding just started last weekend, and we offer small group OWL programs as well as some of our public OWL programs that are coming up here.
I'm probably not a good listener. Ox, crows, eagles, how do they all relate? Are they in the same family? And what redeeming value, why should we want to protect the hawk?
Yeah, those are great questions. Yes. And so crows are not, but raptors. So what makes raptors unique is that they have talons. That's one of the things. They also have that sharp beak. And so they're hunting, prey. And that's what makes them special, is that raptors are at the top of the food chain, which makes them one of those environmental indicator type species. And so since they're eating smaller prey, other birds, smaller mammals, some are fish eaters, if there's something happening in the environment that will bioaccumulate up into raptor species, which then alerts us if we start to see something happening within the trends of our raptor population. We know that something else is happening within our environment, whether it's habitat loss. We're looking at other things through some of our research, looking at environmental pollutants and chemicals. And again, they're one of those species that is important for us to continue to monitor and look at, because they are at that top of the food chain.
Your questions? We know if there's an online question, do we?
I'm monitoring here. There's a comment, but here. So, from Tim Stratton, there is a comment here related to Blue Jays. So, to keep Blue Jays away from Apple, a friend purchased one of those floppy characters that use Force-Air to move around, cost about $125, apparently works, and the only thing that has.
Yeah, please hear that, so you're gonna have.
Yeah.
We didn't hear that.
She's Teresa and her.
Oh.
Anybody else with a question?
Where do hawks go when they migrate?
Yes, and so some of them don't. So maybe some of you have seen more bald eagles, which is true. The bald eagle population is one that has been doing very well. They're able to live here in Duluth all year round, feeding on deer carcasses. Some bald eagles might move just as far as, southern Minnesota, but other raptors, like our broad-winged hawks, which are the ones that we count in largest numbers, they're going all the way down to South America. And so there are birds that, again, are following their food sources. Broad-winged hawks, for example, are ones that are primarily eating amphibians and snakes. And so those are things you're not going to find here in the winter time. So it really depends on what their food source is that's going to drive their movement.
Just one more question. Is there an international or so we can have the, oh yeah, that's right. I should know these things. Is there an international organization that ensures a clear flyway for these birds?
That's a really good question. And yeah, so we and other organizations are working together collaboratively with some other sites that are where birds are going for their wintering grounds. But unfortunately, there's not the same protections that are happening in some of their wintering grounds. So there are sites right now that birds are still being hunted and killed, whether it's for sport, whether it's for food. And so again, doing some of these international tours like we're doing too is a really great education opportunity. And there's more hawk watch sites that are being established by some other North American organizations in Central America, South America, Mexico, some of these main migratory bird places that they're going to, but environmental contaminants. So, there's certain things that are banned here in the US that might not be banned in some of the other countries. And so it is a challenge, and it is something really important that we continue to work on and partner with groups on.
Any other questions? Because Billy has another one. So anybody else? Here we go.
It's annoying, isn't she? Can you attract hawks to your, can you attract hawks to your backyard or?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Put up a bird feeder and there you go. So there's many raptor species that feed on small birds. And so that growing up in Milwaukee, that was the one raptor species I would see frequently in my parents' backyard was a Cooper's hawk. My son is named after the Cooper's hawk because that was kind of my spark raptor. And so I had a neighbor who was an avid bird lover, loved to feed all the birds, but she did not like the Cooper's hawks because the Cooper's hawks would come and feed on some of the smaller songbirds. Exactly. And so sharp-shinned hawks, merlins, yeah, Cooper's hawks, yeah, it just depends on what their food source is. And for many of them, that is, yeah, small birds.
Anyone else? Right?
Habitat, though, that would be the other question. Answer would be, yeah. So, I mean, depending on where your house is yeah, having a forested area or just providing that important habitat for them to nest in or for stopover sites too.
I know there's a lot of discussion about if we should or shouldn't feed birds, but with the commercial bird mixes, are those mixes introducing a lot of introduced species of plants to our area, and is is that making an impact on native species?
Yeah, that's another really good question. And it is true. So there are certain bird mixes that are not that great. You know, they don't have the healthy food that birds are needing. And so Wild Birds Unlimited, unfortunately, we don't have it here in Duluth anymore, but they were always a great source to go to for buying that good clean mix of food. I usually just say black oil sunflower seeds. That seems to be one that really hits a lot of different species that enjoy that, and it's higher in fat, and so it's a good one during the winter time that a lot of birds will feed on and enjoy.
What else? Well,
An amazing presentation. I learned so much today. Thank you so much for being here. Let's give her a round of applause. And thank you again. And for next week, our forum will be the Damiano Center will be making their presentation. It's the woven basket presentation. And since I'm up here, I'm going to tell you of something that I hope all of you will attend, the Paul Douglas Climate Change in the Northland presentation this coming Saturday at the Copper Top Church. He's a meteorologist in the Twin Cities, very respected. He also happens to be an evangelical Christian. So he blends faith into facts. And so folks that you know that may not be believers yet, it's amazing that there are some. Please try to invite them and be there yourself, because his presentation will be a really good presentation called Climate in the Northland. So hope to see you or friends of yours next Saturday and then Sunday here for the Damiano presentation. Thanks again to everybody for being here and online.